buddies, all get together, hash out the news of the world, thoughts, references, what's going on in the whole place. Usually Andy's out here doing the intro. Unfortunately, there's been some sort of an accident where we find Andy is now locked in the basement, or as I like to call it, the fun room, and he's still chained to the board of punishment. At any rate, we're going to get a locksmith in there, and hopefully we'll get bail posted before the show's over, and we can have Andy on. But instead, let us quit talking about him and talk about the real reason we're here. Ladies and gentlemen, my mentor, the man who taught me everything I know, so blame him, Mr. Mark Sweetman. Mark, you're not in the basement too, are you? Hold on.
No, there I am.
There he is.
Right.
I summoned you, Mark. I summoned
you. This is so much, but when I had Seth Wrestler doing all the background stuff, and all I had to do was the intro and the talking and everything, God, that was great.
Well, I tell you what, when we get that extra piece of equipment back, it'll allow me to maybe do some engineering and let you do what you do best, being the bon vivant and the center, the very what am I trying to say? The very pinnacle, core. The apex, the core, the core of this.
I don't want to be the apex.
Affair.
I want to be the.
We'll let Susan be the apex, because she knows how to do apexian things, and she does them.
Okay, she's our poetic and legal mind for the.
And and apex predator.
Although she doesn't give any legal advice. Let me be clear. She doesn't give any legal advice. No legal advice whatsoever comes through the podcast.
That's right.
Who's on your shoulder? It looks so funny because it looks like he's standing on your shoulder. Oh, no,
that is Charlton Heston from Ben-Hur.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Chuck on my shoulder. You know, come on.
Chuck on my shoulder. And I got my Tiger jersey on today.
You know, I was just watching the game a couple of minutes ago on the way in, and someone hit a home run, and they're calling it up, and I'm like, oh, is that Andy?
No, I don't see Andy yet.
And all I could think was, geez, Tiger's hitting home runs. What is that, Lance Parrish? Who's behind the plate? That, you know, just to let you know that I'm not just living in the past. I'm sort of entombed back there. But if you are going to live in the past, the 1984 Tigers, not a bad place to be.
I tell you what, though, this young rookie they have that came up, that's basically given Lance Parrish a run for his money.
I've heard.
Dylan Dingler, we're doing very well this year, and neither of them will even touch Bill Freehand, but that goes without saying, you know.
One can't touch Bill Freehand without a Ouija board.
All right.
I didn't say it was a Ouija board. I was just referring to his spiritual essence. I didn't say anything about his hot, manly flesh.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
No, you didn't.
You've misunderstood me. I'm offended. How dare you? How dare you?
There you go.
So
false indignation.
Yes, and even though, folks, I know we've mentioned it before, but we'll say it one more time here. We miss Sam. We do.
We do.
We do.
I do. You know, you don't realize. And he called me more when he was in the hospital. You know, he was in the hospital from Christmas Eve on. 2 days he came home and fell on the third day,
right,
and had to go back into the hospital. He was a quick out of the hospital that second time, and it was in rehab where he got sick. So
now, was he in the hospital because he was sick, or because the missus put him in the hospital?
No.
With the right hand and
no. All the joking he did about his wife, that was all joking. They were
I know. The lovely Barbara was very kind to him.
Yes,
and if she was going to get rid of him, she would have poisoned him rather quickly.
Exactly, the way you're supposed to. All right,
exactly.
Yeah.
And on that note,
anyway, we can talk
Susan
later. Let's get Susan out here. All right,
there you go.
There's our. Oh, I like your shirt.
With ready
to. Thank you. Oh yeah, this is the shirt. Can you read it? It says, "I survived 42 years of marriage. That's my superpower."
I think raising 8 kids and not putting a couple in the backyard is pretty pretty miraculous in a certain way. I mean,
oh, we put kids in the backyard. I mean,
no, I meant under the backyard. Like my mother.
Yeah, that's
My
Why
mother.
are you so dark today? Okay.
My mother used to threaten us with that all the time. She was
Jason's always dark.
If you'd
When
met
we put our
Dearest
kids
mom,
But we're talking about children. No, they play, catch and things, and there's a swing set and
we had
a
zip line.
slide. What are you thinking?
We had a zip line in our backyard, which was a lot of fun.
We had a cute little climbing thing, and Mark's grandma had a bell that we put up there that was fun for the kids to ring, but our neighbor kept coming over and cutting the string.
We had a pentagram, and
he
the
didn't
bell
like
used
the
to
bell.
be on the goat's neck, but
No, this was one of those boat bells, actually.
Oh,
all right. Ring the bell.
There you go.
And
then sailors
kids
appear.
like to ring the bell. Somehow the neighbors thought that was loud and annoying. And
was that Bill? Was that Bill that cut the line?
Probably, yeah.
So I don't think it was. I don't think it was the Davises.
I thought it was perfectly appropriate for kids to ring a bell.
Have been in a variety of places. I'm serious. Now, I remember Mark talking about back in the day. You guys actually lived in Detroit way back when.
We did.
We had three residences in Detroit. We owned 4.
We had 2 apartments and 2 houses.
2 houses in Detroit. Yeah.
Nice.
And
but one of the houses we did not live in. We bought it and it had renters, and so we bought a different house because we could buy a lot of houses in Detroit.
There was
on our crappy jobs.
we had 3 different residences in California.
Yep.
4 if you count the hotel in Beverly Hills we stayed at.
Yeah, well, that was just for a week, so I could.
We stayed at a hotel in Beverly Hills for a week.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because I had a job start date, so we moved up there so I could start my job before we found the place to live. But anyway, there's a lot of news this week, and I just went on news overload. So there's multiple acts of violence. There's just so much going on, and
sounds like a passage from Revelations. But anyway,
and you sound like you say I'm the gloomy one. All right,
yeah, exactly. Well, let's put Susan on here all solo and stuff so that she can do her poem for us, and then we'll get back to her. Maybe Andy will join us by then. All right, here we go.
Get him out of the basement there.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's your poem this week. Mount Etna erupted in Italy, shot massive ash for all to see. Flamethrower attack in Colorado. Tariffs back on, watch the price of avocado. Drone attack successful on Russian bombers. Trump peace talks are not worthy of honors. And Elon Musk has stepped down. Perhaps he realized Trump's just a clown. And that's your poem.
Oh, that is a short one. You're right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Susan.
All right, let's get everyone back up here. Let me see. I'm trying to use my mouse to do this. I think I found the spot where I go. Oh, there it is.
There we go.
I did it properly.
Hi, Andy.
I'm terribly sorry. I just got in by car. My phone battery is down, and I couldn't communicate. So
that's right. We had a little discussion before you got here that I can't remember what it was, so we can just repeat it because we weren't on the air either, too. So we can repeat it for that reason. So.
Oh, you weren't on the air?
No, we were. We were talking about Jason and I before Susan came on. We were talking about how much we miss Sam.
Oh yeah.
And I was mentioning that I talk to him once or twice a week, in addition to being on the show for an hour. And Susan will vouch for this. I don't think any of those phone calls was less than a half an hour. Sam liked to talk. That's for sure.
And your buddy.
Anyway, we'll be there in 3 weeks. We'll be there in 3 weeks for his memorial.
Oh, very good. Very good.
And the funny thing is that even though Sam and I were politically somewhat adverse, we never let it get personal, other than him, using horrible invective, but saying he meant it in the nicest possible way, as always.
Both of you guys don't go to the fringe of your thought group. or whatever.
Well, that's the thing. I'm as middle of the road Eisenhower Republican as you can get. You know.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he's a Kennedy Democrat. So you know.
There you go.
Well, you know what they say: if two people agree on everything, one of them is unnecessary.
You're channeling my mother again, huh?
Channeling the mother.
She said that we had three. She had three sons, and she would say that is the exact same thing to two of us. That was amazing.
Yeah, you know? I think that was a pretty common phrase in our parents' day, Jason.
Well, my mother was sort of the Antonia LaVey of our neighborhood. So, I mean, for those of us who know who Anton LaVey was, they would certainly understand the reference. But anyway, you guys are all nice, good Christian people. I'm sure you all hail from the west side of the state. You know, our dear friends out there in Grand Rapids. You know,
I don't. I'm from.
No. I come from a completely different state altogether. So
no doubt about that, Susan. No one is arguing.
And I come from.
Maybe yours is a state of mind.
I grew up in Waterford, Michigan. Parents from Detroit and Pontiac.
There you go.
And when I was born,
Canada family.
I have some Canadian relatives, on my mother's side.
And East Coast Massachusetts family.
Jason, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Who was the Secretary of State during the Lincoln administration?
Wasn't that Seward? John Seward?
You see, the most obscure references are out of his head. You know what I'm saying? He's like,
I was alive during the Lincoln.
Sources of the obscure references, you know?
I can remember the first Johnson administration. I mean, so it's
Andrew Johnson.
Well, that's him. You remember him too? Yeah.
I remember Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, I need to moisturize more because I'm getting older, and I realize that my skin is on the spectrum somewhere between Keith Richards and Godzilla, and I'm not sure, you know, I mean, at this point, if it even helps anymore.
All those years in the front seat of a taxi, that's what got it for you.
Dude, you go outside during the daylight at my age, and the bright sunlight has a recoil. I mean, you know, I mean.
Well, it's kind of hazy today with those Canadian wildfire smoke.
Yeah, they're supposed to get worse.
The sun this morning was just orange through all that ash.
I had nothing to do with it this time. I'm completely innocent.
We had that a couple of years ago, I remember.
Yeah.
Canadian forest fires. For those of you watching or listening live, the Tigers are up 5-0. For those of you who are listening at a later date, that would be the world champion Detroit Tigers at 5-0.
Hey, what do you guys think of this manager? I mean, this is what, his third year now or fourth? I can't quite remember.
AJ Hinge?
The manager for the Detroit Tigers. Yeah.
Oh, he was hired just before the pandemic. He was here in 2018 or something.
6 years or something.
Yeah, 6 or 7 years.
Been
He's been here a long time.
Now. Wow.
Yeah. Well, and the thing
we went to the game on Wednesday and it was chilly. But the rain held off, so and they won! Yay!
They won, yeah.
What can I say, guys? I spend a lot of time in the locker room, not very much time in the stands.
Wasn't Hinge involved with the Astro fiasco?
Yes,
that's what I was kind of wondering because he kind of
somebody mentioned that because he was let go because he was the manager, but had nothing to do with it. He wasn't sanctioned by the league or anything like that because this was done without his knowledge. Although it would be hard to hear the trash can being clunked every time your batters come up, but not when the other team's batters are up there. You know what I mean? So but their law. I mean, had it not been for that that issue, he'd still be with Houston, and we'd have our 16th. Sucky manager, you know what I mean? I'm kind of glad they got caught so we could get him as our manager. You know,
Ralph Houck the fourth would be
Ralph Houck. You know what? Ralph Houck was a good manager, and here's what's wrong with the 1975 through 1970, halfway through 79 Tigers.
Yes.
Okay. The problem was Jim Campbell was still the general manager.
Yes.
And he was trying to win the 1968 World Series. Which just was, you know what I mean? Once they won it, you know, he made a couple of good trades. He got a Aurelio Rodriguez after the World Series. He got Ed Brinkman after the World Series, and they were great. And he got Joe Coleman after the World Series, and he had a lot of he had a lot of good players. And
help me out, guys. Was it Sparky's first year or was it his second or third year when we had the 84 series?
He started midway through 70,
years.
He started midway through 79.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That sounds right. Yeah.
78, Ralph Houck retired, 78. And so they brought Les Moss up from the
Yes, Les Moss. Thank you. I'd forgotten about him.
Les Moss coached until June 15th when the Reds, for some unknown reason, canned Sparky Anderson.
Yeah.
I'll tell you when it was. If you watch that episode of WKRP in Cincinnati, they had taped the episode when he was still with Cincinnati. And they had to retape that scene and say he's now, because he had done that episode of WKRP in Cincinnati. But before it aired, he was with Detroit. So they retaped one of the scenes. It made the news.
All right. So Jim Campbell, who had been the GM when, and that was the same time that Tom Monahan bought him.
He bought him in 83. He bought him in late 1983.
83 and won the first year he owned him. Yep. Right. But anyway, Bill LaJoy had taken over for Jim Campbell in 79.
Okay.
And Sparky Anderson got fired within months of that. And he thought it was, you know what? Nobody's gonna hate me for firing Les Moss. Nobody knows who the hell he is. You know what I mean? No. He's just a minor league manager. We brought him up because we're loyal, and that's how the Tigers do it. Jim Leland took Les Moss's place, and that's how he got his start.
Yeah, but you have a chance to get Sparky Anderson to manage your team. To get Sparky
Anderson. Same as when the Pistons fired Rick Carlisle in order to get Herb Brown.
Yes.
And the same as when can't count the Lions for anything, but remember whoever was in charge when they hired the guy that coached Baltimore. He coached the Colts to a Super Bowl. What was his name? You know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's not an uncommon thing in Detroit to can your guy and bring in somebody who leads them off. Scotty Bowman came into the Red Wings that way.
Well, let's not forget we forced Lloyd Carr to retire from Michigan to get rich. Well, never mind. Bad example.
Speaking of Red Wings, Mark, remember we had several back-to-back, Stanley Cups, and the kids loved going to those June parades.
Yeah, June. Yeah, they liked the June
November parades.
Yeah, they hated the November Thanksgiving Day parade, but when we went in June to watch the Red Wings go down this Woodward, they loved that.
Well, June Parade is my dancer name when I work up north.
Okay.
June Parade.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to say good night.
All right. Good night.
All right.
Good night, Susan.
Leave, Susan, so I can give my dancer name.
Oh my God.
She's a comic. She appreciates that. My dancer name is Tuck It In.
Tuck It In. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Forrest Tuck It In. Yeah.
Forrest Tuck.
Does anyone remember Forrest? Well, I don't know, but the man held the record for many, many years. So, yeah, he was the big man in Hollywood for many years. He was renowned for giving.
Forrest Tucker.
Yeah, Forrest
Tucker Forrest Tucker is on the list.
For those of you who don't know what the list is, we'll post it at some point later on once we do the off night after dark segment.
Yeah. On the list in comedy world, on the list is the one that they refer to when they say if he's not on it, or if he's not, he's on the list.
Yes. There you go.
Somebody dies, he's in.
There you go.
That's what they always say in comedy. Richard Simmons? I don't know. If he's not, he's on the list.
Yeah. Although I don't think he's on the Forrest Tucker list, or Forrest has got to be on top of him, so to speak.
Oh, he's a top. Forrest is a top.
Forrest is definitely he's
too manly to be a bottom.
No, not gonna happen. Not gonna happen there. So all right.
So last night. Now, you guys know I'm only doing the Unclub once a month, and because I'm traveling again, Sometimes it's not even once a month. So I did my first show in 2 months last night. It was fun. And Darwin Hines showed up. You guys, Andy, do you remember Darwin Hines?
Yeah, Darwin Hines. Remember how was it? How was he? Good?
He was great. He did the same thing. He never really did set up punchline. He was always talk to the audience, remember?
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And that's what he did last night. It's perfect for the ale house.
Yeah.
Because everybody starts paying attention. Had I thought of it, he didn't want to do it at first. Like Susan and I talked him into it. And I wish I talked him into it early because he's the type of act that would get people paying attention to the show.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is with Kurum, he does punchline setup kind of thing. But yet when he decides he wants to do crowd work, when he wants to do stuff that's sort of like off the cuff, he's so good. I think so good. It's like
Kurum,
yeah. I mean, I'm not criticizing his. I mean, everyone needs you've got to have some jokes. You've got to tell some jokes. Okay, that's the way it's got to be. But when he starts sort of like freelancing and just sort of stream of consciousning the stuff, the guy's good at what he does, and hopefully we get to see him a little more at the Unclub.
Well, do we have an audience for our Darwin Hines? Was there an audience
last night? No, well, people didn't know he was going to be there, so it's not like he knew anybody. But and we had, you know what? It's same as always. You always have like 4 to 6 people that kind of go, "Hey, this is kind of interesting," and they hang out. Yeah. And we had Dylan, which drives me nuts. I mean, I guess I'm saying it publicly now because we're on a podcast, but
right.
He's not really attractive enough to be bragging about his skills in cunnilingus. I mean, nobody believes it,
Yeah. No, that's
there's a sense of believability to it all. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, he's now confident enough on stage that he should be writing. He should be listening to what people are laughing at and writing in that direction because he's now confident. He does write funny stuff.
Yeah.
But it just feels to me like he's up there trying to get laid. And it's not working.
Yeah.
And nobody can seem to tell him that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And you know what? And my advice is always, look, if you're getting into comedy to learn how to get laid, to try to get laid, my suggestion is don't suggest it on stage. My suggestion is be as funny as you damn well can.
Yeah.
And they'll just come running to you. Don't worry about it. You will be a magnet, I mean, just don't.
The grouse out factor is,
I'm told.
Really
great. I'm told. You'll be a magnet.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm still, sort of dealing with the fact that for many years I had a vehicle where, if you pulled the emergency release hatch, it would do nothing but illuminate a row of laughing clown faces. But
do you write any of this stuff down? Do you write any of these down?
That one I've used before. Actually, when I'm talking about driving a cab. And actually, you'd be amazed when I set that one up well, it goes over. Joe Conant helped me with that one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Joe is a very funny. I don't know if you know him or not, Mark, but Joe, he's dabbled in theater and done some this and that and the other thing.
Right.
But again, former cab driver. And so we have that sort of like dark sort of cabby streak, if you will.
Oh, you know about Joe Conant?
Yeah.
Was he there last night?
No. I mean, a couple of years ago, he helped me write the joke with the whole laughing clown faces motif. As I
have you had contact with him lately?
Not recently. No, I haven't had contact with anyone recently except for Arius there on the raft. I don't know if you can see him, but he's behind me there.
When I mentioned it was the 5th inning of the tech, it's 5-0 in the 2nd inning. I saw the 5. I thought it meant 5th inning, but it's only the 2nd inning. They're up 5-0.
So is Darwin Hines working right now, or is he just kind
of? I don't think he is. We'll get him on the show sometime here, and we'll have him. I don't want to tell his story because so many things about what I know about his story comes from other people, and I sure would like to have him tell it. But he's got a very interesting story about what happened in his career.
It would be nice for you to get Ned on, even if he doesn't want to commit to a regular thing. If you could sort of like get a sort of a rolling, have him once a month, maybe get some other people in here. I don't know. I mean, it's just a thought to sort of bring in some of these guys and have them talk a little bit.
One more thing about Darwin Hines. Remember when Tony Hayes won that comedy thing?
Oh,
Darwin Hines was involved in that also. He was one of the winners.
Are you talking about the Johnny Walker?
Yeah, the Johnny Walker thing. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And Darwin Hines was involved in that. So I remember he did a little video, and it looked like it looked like him. Yeah, I'm ironing my own stuff, guys. You know, it's like it was pretty interesting though. I don't know.
I don't remember that part. I do remember I was in the finals the night that Tony won, and I do remember. I can't remember if Darwin was in the finals. I was at Chaplin's, and it won Tony a trip to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And Bud Friedman's wife loved him.
Yeah.
But he didn't know how to play that. So in other words, it's like when Jackie Ridley thought I was worth booking. You know what I did? I found out what days Jackie was in the office when Mark was taking calls, and I'd call when she, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just have to learn how to manipulate where your uppers are and try to avoid where your downers are.
I mean, the thing about Tony Hayes was I saw him go out to LA, and it's like, and I went out there with him, and
what year was that?
Back here, when we were working back here, we were like improvising off the audience. We were like doing improv and stuff like that. And he would do that too. It'd tell stories and do character and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Then we transfer that out to LA, and it's like they've seen everything. They've seen it all. You know what I'm saying? And it was kind of like he would do the stuff and get no reaction at all.
And you know what? That is, and I would tell everybody, the guy who was my sort of mentor and all that. Do you remember Taylor Negron?
Yeah.
Yes.
He was the guy that said, your best show isn't your best show out here, and your worst show isn't your worst show. Yeah. Just don't think that because you kill one night that you are now Steve Martin or Johnny Carson. Just don't don't let your head get over it. And when you bomb and people are throwing tomatoes at you, your career isn't over. That's just, he said, my advice to you is find something else artistic. Do you write? Do you paint? Do you play a musical instrument? Find something else to do or even if it's minor league artistic, maybe you could go down to the community center and repair bikes for kids or something, whatever, what he was saying is you can't let this be your end all and be all. Yeah. That was Taylor Negron, who passed away the same day as my dad. He passed away the same day as my dad. So my spiritual dad, my actual dad, died the same day. So.
Way too young too, because he was not
46.
An old man.
I think he was 46 or something, wasn't I? No, he was.
I don't know if it was AIDS, but it as I recall, it was something that is typically associated with an AIDS-related complex. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I could be.
I don't know. He wasn't
his memory.
He wasn't one. He wasn't one too that wore his sexuality on his sleeve either. So
no, but he wasn't exactly John Wayne out there either.
That's true. That's true. The other thing too is he was of an age and of an era where that could have hurt your career to be really out there. So
even in the 80s.
Even are you kidding me?
No, I'm serious.
No, even in the 80s, yeah. I mean, it was sort of like everybody knew, but you just didn't. You know what I mean?
But you just didn't want to bring it up,
it's not like it's not like today where you bring your parents on the Tonight Show to tell them,
Right.
All right, what was I looking up again?
Tony Hayes was also with a Comedy Store, right? He did some stuff at the Comedy Store. Tony Hayes.
Tony Hayes. Well, I saw him at the Improv.
Yeah.
A couple of times. What year did you go out there with him?
Somewhere in 91, just before the riots.
All right. Yeah, I was there. I was there in 91.
Yeah. And I saw him do some work. I saw him kill at a club, and I saw him, bomb at a club. And,
did you ever see him work? Did you ever see him work in the South Central clubs? Those are the place to watch black comics.
No, I didn't get a chance to get down.
And Tony really see the Detroit comedy scene's different now. Back when Darwin and Tony and Lowell Sanders and Wayne Brinston and all those guys, when they were working, they didn't have black audiences like they do now.
Yeah.
So were black audiences just as tough out there? I know it's probably a dumb question, as they are notoriously sort of tough audiences out here.
Taylor Negron was 57 when he died.
Oh boy.
Well, the typical the black audiences of, I think, B's Comedy Kitchen. If you wanted to get an example of a black audience, that was B's Comedy Kitchen.
That was later. That was actually after I moved back from LA in 95 that it was black audience. When I left here in 87, B's was basically her lunch crowd staying over.
Well, I mean, I've heard stories of like Dave
Chappelle. That was such a notorious little club, though. It was like you go down there just to bomb. You know, it's like,
you know what? I would love to get together and video just everybody's remembrances of B's Comedy Kitchen. I think that would make a pretty excellent 1 hour long documentary. Just talking about B's Comedy Kitchen.
It would be like the movie The Aristocrats. You know, it's like. What horrible thing happened?
We'd call it the B aristocrats.
The B aristocrats.
So was that the club here in Detroit, or was that?
Oh yeah, well you've heard.
It was at Larned. It was at Larned and Brush in downtown Detroit, in the shadow of the Renaissance Center. It was between the Renaissance Center and a neighborhood they called Bricktown.
Yep,
and beyond that was Greektown.
Yep,
and it was all that whole east of Randolph. Randolph is the street that leads to the tunnel. Yep. Everything east of Randolph was nothing but old and new restaurants in old and older buildings.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, the thing about B, she was always on the phone in the back during the show.
Yes.
Always yelling at somebody.
Yes.
And they're always taking tickets right up until the end of the first show.
Yep.
So people.
Well, and the thing is, Steve had a scale ticket price. So, you know, people would walk up, young kids would walk up, all right, $5 each, you know, $20 for a foursome to come in. And then a limo would drop 4 people off. You go, all right, $25 each, you know.
A veiling scale. There you go.
Yeah, it was a scale. It was based on his judgment of how much money they had.
Yeah, in econ we would call that a demand elasticity, which is to say, yes, how much you can demand.
Black kids, $2.
$2.
Kids dressed well with beepers, with little beepers. Remember beepers? Those are the drug dealers. So they got charged $25. You know?
The thing about the second show though is that people will start to leave at the point that they came in during
like in the movies, like in the old time in the movies. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's just it's such a great, and so many big headliners played there. You know what I mean? Before it just became a showcase room.
Yeah.
I headlined there in '88. That's the last time I headlined there. I worked there a couple of times when I came back. I came back and Tony Brown was still there.
Downtown Tony Brown.
Yeah.
What happened to him?
God. There you go.
He passed away a few years ago.
Oh wow.
Let me look up Tony.
He was notorious for having the cheapest car, you know?
Right.
Oh yeah. He was always great.
I realized this.
I was taking him back to his house in Highland Park all the time. And I say, you don't want too good of a car in this neighborhood. You know, you want a junker that nobody wants to bother with here.
Exactly. They had
and Danny Gray, remember Hey Danny Gray?
Oh yeah, hey Danny. He would get mad. He would get really mad halfway through his act because nobody was kind of laughing, but he always like, hey Danny Gray, you know.
Hey, you want a good time? He would say to the audience. Just remember, hey Danny Gray.
Right.
Well, you've seen on the west side of the state. Now this predates us a bit. Where they had the Inkwell, where they had the clubs and the resorts that were black only.
Oh, and
from back in the day.
Yeah.
And they would book the top talent.
Idlewild.
Yeah, and Idlewild. And there has been some documentation lately about how, you know, there's still a few structures that are left, and obviously it's not what it used to be. It's sort of like obviously a deserted and sort of place now, but
where was this? On the west side of Michigan?
On the west side of Michigan, and it was a and there it wasn't the only place, but there were these resorts that were just straight up for black folks because segregation was fairly strict at the time.
Was that about like around Mattawan in that area, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they built their own resorts, and they had their own clubs.
Tony died in 21. I never had it confirmed, but it was during COVID time, and he was 68. So he was, at the age when
is Haywood Banks still with us, or is he?
Haywood Banks is still with us. He lives way up north, and he really only does theaters and clubs that he did coming up. In other words, he'll come in and do one night at the Castle or one night in Ann Arbor, just because those are the places that supported him on the way up. Yeah. But other than that, he pretty much does theaters. He can sell out theaters now. So
really.
Yeah,
nice.
And he does.
He's got that music thing that he does.
Yes, and he doesn't. And the thing is about him is it's not like the rest of us that had to come in with a new 45 minutes every year or two.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if you drew people back, they didn't want to see the same thing. His audience wants to see the same thing. Play toast.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh. Ooh. Oh. Ooh. U-Haul. There you go. It's like.
Well, Norm Crosby was someone who, again, he didn't tell. There were jokes in his stuff, but for him,
I got a little something here for you.
This crazy monologue.
I got nothing for you. I got nothing for you. A little something for you there.
Yeah, at least it was relatively inventive, and different approaches, and I don't know. I guess. You had a chance to actually do that. I mean, we've all seen the half-hour specials that everyone just doing their best 5 minutes, right? The ye old tight 5, which is different from a straight 6, but we won't go into that now. Yeah. That's an automotive term, of course.
Yeah, that's okay. But I really loved when Haywood put his finger on the sound thing and create the radioactivity sound.
Yeah. Well, when he did things like he just had the word "that" written on a card and go, who put that there?
But who put that? I mean,
just really simple visual tricks, but they were so effective. They were so that they work. You look at it and you go, why didn't I think of that? And he's just out there.
In a ways, a lot of what Stuart did, Haywood Stewart. I knew him when he was Stuart Mitchell. So
right.
For the Haywood Banks character came. But anyway, a lot of what he did was really a tribute to Soupy Sales. He did a lot of that type of thing,
Yep. And I did not realize that I was listening to the radio the other day how much Soupy Sales was involved in getting rock and roll on the radio way back in the day. I think he started out in Cincinnati, if memory serves.
Yep, he did.
And he's like one of the first DJs who started playing this horrifying, degenerate noise that was going to destroy the youth of America, and thank God it did. Because I always associate sort of like a guy like Alan Freed with the with his original Moondog Ball and the radio shows that he had.
Soupy's
son lucky enough to open for Soupy Sales during a New Year's Eve party,
right?
Up at the Holly Hotel.
Oh. Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Well,
Soupy's son, can't think of his name now, but he has some rock and roll chops. He has that.
Tony and Hunt are two of the best musicians around.
Yeah, Hunt Sales was he was in Iggy Pop's Lust for Life.
Yeah.
That they and he has that drum beat that they use in the cruise ship commercials where they play Lust for Life on the cruise ship.
Oh, he gets the royalty on that?
He sure does, baby.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Tony and Hunt Sales were part of Tin Machine, which backed David Bowie for 2 or 3 years. So I mean,
Iggy and Bowie were good friends. So.
Oh yeah, I mean that you can't be a less than musician and tour and record with Iggy. Or I mean with David Bowie. So.
Do you guys remember? Do you guys remember Niagara?
Niagara Falls?
No, Niagara. The
slowly singer. I turn.
What's that? Slowly.
And he was doing
No. She was in Destroy All Monsters and Black Flag. I think she was.
Yes.
She was the girlfriend of Ron Ashton.
Yes.
Of the Stooges.
Right.
And then she was in Destroy All Monsters and another punk band at that time. Anyway, I'm friends with her on Facebook. And
God, you remember Destroy All Monsters?
Yes,
Oh my
absolutely.
God!
That was when I was in college, so that was like a big deal. Yeah.
Because Ron and Scott Ashton lived. I used to do their lawn. They lived at their mother's house, right there on High Lake.
Who thought Iggy would be the last Stooge alive?
Again, I can remember the man sexually harassing me as a 10-year-old because here's the deal: you do the Ashton's lawn. Right. She would get home at 4 and she'd pay you $5. And
that
this
was
is
a
like
lot of money back then.
10. Oh, are you kidding? You're 10 years old. You got a $5 bill. I mean,
yeah, you're living.
Yeah,
you're living large on the playground. You're buying that. You're buying the bag of Steelies. You don't have.
Oh, absolutely. You're
you got Dairy Queen, Steelies, baby.
And oh yeah, absolutely. And that was when the Dairy Queen meant something different than it would later mean in the 80s. But never mind that. But she would come home. They would have to stop practicing because they would be practicing at their house till she got home. And one time, he's up there. He's sort of giving me the what for and this and that and blowing kisses at me. And they're like, Jim, leave him alone. The kid cuts our lawn. His real name was Jim Osterberg or Oysterberg.
Yeah. His dad worked at U of M.
Yeah. And he wasn't being meaner. He was just being a 19-year-old kid who.
Yeah, you look at pictures of him as a kid. He looks like a normal, regular kid.
Yeah,
you probably went skipping stones with him down at the lake. That type of
I mean, when I'm hearing the MC5 on the radio the other day, and it's just like, oh my God, it's just. And again, they're all gone now. I don't think there's any MC5 left.
None of the 5 are left. And the sad part is that they were nominated 14 times for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. When there were still 4 of them, Fred Smith was gone. There were 3 of them still here when they were starting getting nominated because bands that were in were saying, you guys got to get
them in.
Yeah,
right.
And so they don't get in until after they're all dead. I thought that was horrible.
Yeah, well, and the Stooges had to buy their own seats at the
everybody.
table.
Everybody has to buy their
own seat.
Unless you're still selling records for a record company, and nobody sells records anymore.
No,
unless you're still selling records, you buy your own seats.
No, I don't have a whole heck of a lot of use for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It is what it is, but still,
it is what it is. I think. And they're there to make the Baseball Hall of Fame look legitimate.
You can go online and see a short 8mm experimental film that Nico shot with members of with members of Iggy and the Stooges.
Well, Nico of Velvet
Underground, and then she had her own career, and a lot of these folks, they'd cycle through Ann Arbor. Johnny Thunders spent time here in Ann Arbor. Yep. The Ramones spent time here in Ann Arbor.
Patti Smith.
Yeah, I mean they come through Ann Arbor. They roll through Detroit. Because it was one of these places where they could come and hang out, and be kind of nobody, not be harassed, if you will. But what I
always thought was kind of cool was that there's a jazz club. There's the 20 Grand, which was the Rhythm and Blues Club.
Right.
There was the Grandy Ballroom, which was the Rock and Roll Club, and then there was I think it's called the Little Bird, or the Bluebird, Bluebird Lounge, and the triangle it formed was like an American music triangle because they were only blocks away from each other. And I thought
we had in Ann Arbor the Bird of Paradise, which was a great little jazz club, and I don't know if you guys know who Toots Thielemans is. But he plays the pan flute, a French dude. Did some of the music for Midnight Cowboy.
Okay.
I get tickets to his show. A friend of mine who's a really big jazz fan, and maybe you guys have had something like this happen to you. My friend comes to the show with me. His name was Aura. Don't make any jokes. He gets really drunk. He starts whistling along with Toots during the performance. Audibly, loudly, whistling along with the performer. Now, to be fair, he was right in tune. I mean, it would have been a great, but Toots was not there to do a duo.
Right.
He was, and I'm just trying to, and I'm like, is there like an escape hatch or something I can like fall into? Is there like one of those like villain special sort of like foot pedal things that caused me to fall into the sub basement? Something like that, so I can escape this nightmare. When you're going to a nice jazz club and whatnot, and suddenly, the person you're with decides that he wants to be part of the show as well. It's like, okay, not for me. But yeah, that was one of my experiences. Also, the Bird was where I got to see Ray Brown several times.
Oh, there you go.
And Ray Brown and Ron Carter did what 95% of all the bass for all jazz records, cut between what 1958 till what 10 minutes ago, something like that. I mean, even though Ray's been dead for many years now, it doesn't matter. He's still amazing. And the nice thing about the jazz club shows was that you could just go up and approach these guys after the show. They're just having a drink. Hi, here. You want to buy a CD? I'll sign it for you. Yeah, I don't know what the comedy community was like at that time, whether that sort of openness or approachability.
People having merch. There was never. I don't remember anybody back in the 80s having merch.
You didn't need it.
I remember it in the 90s.
You didn't need. Well, here's what I remember about the 80s, Andy. Yeah. Was that I didn't have time to sell merch.
Yeah.
I was usually going on to sometimes these drives. Yeah. I either wanted to get to bed because I had to make a long drive the next day,
right?
Or I was driving overnight so that I could get to it if it was even further away. So, but the thing is, and plus, now they're paying like middle and head and openers like $100, and we were making $800 or $900 a week as a middle act back then.
Yeah.
So.
And
it's a totally merch. I don't think people want to do merch. Nobody likes sitting out there going, "Oh, you want a CD?" Even though nobody makes CD players anymore. Anybody want to buy a CD?
Yeah.
But during the 80s, there were especially around here amongst some of the indie musicians, and to some degree, some of the indie comedians. They would have self-burned CDs. They would have home-produced cassette tapes because it was their way of supporting themselves.
Yeah,
because that was a time people were the comedy bubble, as you remember, did change into the 90s. The economics did change.
I'd say probably between 92 and 94 is when that kind of.
And it changed for musicians as well. It changed for music as well. I mean, so you did have people, especially around here, selling their stuff right out back out of the trunk of whatever Toyota Corolla or whatever it is they'd managed to roll into the parking lot, an old Ford cop car. Dear to my heart as an old cab driver.
There was a comic that on one of the Michigan Facebook boards says, "Why don't we have a union? Why don't we get together and have a union?" And of course, my response is, well, in order to have a union, you have to have somebody who is not treating you well, and it's got to be somebody treating you worse than you treat yourself. So if you have so much confidence in yourself that you're giving everything away, then there really is no need for a union, because your competition is people that want to give it. And in a way, comedy introduced the Chinese to the give it away so cheap that you destroy the market and then you can take it over. That's sort of like comics kind of did that.
So I'm not sure how we're blaming the Chinese for the fall of comedy, but Mark has worked it out.
I've worked it out. I'm blaming comedy for the rise of China, not China for the fall of comedy.
So Chinese communism and comedy together.
Let's do it for free.
Together has ruined the markets in America.
You go in, do it for free, and the other ones will not be paid. Then they will die. Okay.
Well, about the time I was getting out, there were like these big wars in New Orleans and St. Louis and Memphis, and what they were doing is if there was more than one club in a town, they would give away so many free tickets to try to attract people away from the other. The idea was, we'll outlast the other guy, they'll close down, and then we'll be the only game in town.
Well, on another front, and Mark, you are old enough that you probably witnessed this yourself. The comedians who did sort of have a political edge. There were a lot of political comedians in the 80s, and there were a lot of comedians who had nothing to do with politics. A lot of rivalry between those two camps, or
no, because what it came down to is if you saw somebody doing politics, it was in a show that was for politics.
Well, like Belzer or
the one I get the most
would have it.
Bill Hicks and the other guy was from San Francisco. Let me think of his name. Come on. Will Durst.
Will Durst, who used to do his Reagan impressions.
Yes. Yep.
And pretty good ones.
Yeah. Bill's he just came through a very severe health condition. I think he had a stroke or something, and he's now doing YouTube videos. I don't think he's doing stage that much anymore. He'll, that's the type of, Will Durst comes to your room. You're going, you don't have to do anything. Just get up on stage so that I can say Will Durst was here. Club owners will say that type of thing. He has that type of reputation.
But it was a time though when they could make fun of Nancy Reagan, and they did. I
don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I didn't say there is. I'm just saying it was an area where you could comedically sort of merge those two things and put them out there. It's a way of bringing current events into a comedic setting. And certainly Nancy did provide us with a little bit of fodder, to say the least.
Well, I don't remember too many political comics until about the late 90s.
Well,
there's Steve. Today there's Steve Hofstetter. I don't know if you know him or not. He does political humor, and I think Sarah Silverman
was always
Sarah Silverman. She does political material, but she makes sure that the political stuff is sort of like the undertow of it. All this stuff, when she's talking about relationships with her dad or dating a guy, there'll be something political about it. I used to do the same thing with me. I made my father-in-law the foil of a lot of jokes, and it wasn't really my father-in-law. It was just a guy I made up for my act.
Right.
But he was the Republican stooge for my show.
Okay. Yeah. So
I would always
have sort of your straight man.
My father-in-law is worried that the Japanese are going to buy all our companies. I say sell them to them. Sell every last one. Vote in a socialist government and take them back. Let's get their money first, then take the companies back. So,
but you didn't see a whole lot of pushback from any of the other more traditional comedians or ones who were non-political.
Tim Slago would always tell me that he'd hear people grumbling in the audience if I did anything that was political. But that was Tim Slago. Tim Slago was all political, but his politics is to the right. So, he would let me know when people complained about my leftist stuff. Yeah. It was okay for him to do. It was okay for him to do the right wing stuff, but not,
Well, I don't know if you say he crossed the line. I loved Sam Kinison, still do. And of course, he, amongst other things, women not as big as fans, and of course, AIDS was a huge thing in the 80s. It was into the 80s, into the 90s. People were dying for it, left, right, and center. And terrifying as that was, it did make apartment shopping a lot easier. Oh God! Well, at least the illness was fairly quick, and the wallpaper is very nice. But anyway, saying Kinison got a lot of pushback. He got.
I don't think he was
pushback about the.
Now, do you consider him political? See, you know what?
Well, it's more social. It was more social than political.
Yeah, it's like people.
He was talking about religion. He was talking about this. He wasn't talking about politics. He was talking about social society.
More than political. He was Carlin-esque, is what he was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
Carlin certainly took both political and social stances.
But Carlin didn't. When you say political, I don't think of Carlin as being political as much as he was. He tried to. His character tried to be honest to a fault. I guess that's a good way to say it. Honest to a fault. His most political. I love his most political bit. It was called Muhammad Ali. Did you ever hear that bit?
No.
Oh, it's on his Class Clown album. You can get a hold of it.
God,
it's called Muhammad Ali, and he does this 12-minute bit. That starts off with him singing the name Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali. Hey, that's a pretty musical name, Muhammad Ali. Sing along with me, Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali at the time when he recorded this, was not so much controversial anymore. He had come back and won the championship back, and But anyway, it's one of my favorite political bits.
Right.
There's another guy from New York, Joey Cola, never made it big, could have.
Right.
He retired by being he made so much money being the warm up for the Martha Stewart show. You wouldn't think.
Oh, going out there and doing the
crowd warm ups.
Oh man.
He retired off of that. But anyway, he had a bit that was about Bob Ross, the painter.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Gee, did you ever see it, Andy?
No.
He was doing it when you were still doing comedy. Genius! Oh my God, it is so funny.
You see, I've seen a version of that where instead of Bob Ross, it's a Bob Ross program, only it's Hitler as the painter.
No, this guy,
given Hitler's penchant as an artist, it works. It's a funny bit.
No, the premise that Joey Cola uses is, and watch this Bob Ross, and of course by this time we're talking about like '88. Everybody knew who he was.
Right.
And so he says, I was reading his bio. He was captured in Vietnam. And he says, I'm expecting this someday from the show. And basically he does like the stereotypical Vietnam vet going mad while he's painting. And it's very funny because you think, well, that's just the joke right there. Just do a couple of lines. No, he just takes it and takes it and takes it and takes it beyond where you think it's going to go. And it becomes very political, but very funny. Very funny.
Yeah, again, it's sort of like bookend this to some degree. Von Meter and the whole First Family thing
That's
during
all
the Kennedy administration.
There's nothing but
I know, but I mean, it's very tame. It's he's got some accents and they're head, but it's very. And after Kennedy was assassinated, of course, even Von Meter admitted his career was over at that point. You could not do that.
Did you hear what he did? I think he's the one that said, how long did it take you to figure out that your career was over? He said, I don't know, 12 seconds. That's because I wanted him to repeat it to make sure I heard it.
Right. By the mid '60s, Lenny Bruce is doing stuff that's getting him thrown in jail on a regular basis.
Yeah, but all of his stuff was political the way Trump's stuff is political.
It wasn't just blue though. It wasn't just him.
No,
saying words.
It was his whole thing was personal vendetta. He got so upset about being arrested that at the end he was reading police reports and making fun of how the police were writing down how they had arrested him and stuff like that. I guess that's funny, but then people start going, all right, are you gonna do anything else? Are you just gonna talk about your police arrest record?
Right.
How about something about how about the stuff you used to do about how the legislature is doing exactly the opposite of what they did 2 years ago. How about when you did that? That was great. Right. Why don't you do something like that? And he wouldn't. He was just, it's like Trump now. Trump is all bent on righting all the wrongs done against him. He does it in the name of doing it all the wrongs done against the country. Yeah. But he doesn't
one of the Lonnie Bruce things I really liked is when he talked about a kid sniffing glue.
Yes. Oh, yes. God, that is a great bit.
And one of my favorite Dick Gregory bits. Again, this is going. He says, again, because Dick Gregory is the first black comedian that I know of who breaks the fourth wall. He talks directly to the audience. He talks directly to a white audience, which was not done. Remember, they used to have two black guys who would talk to each other, tell each other jokes, because they still had that prohibition. And he says, that's the one thing about weather. It gets so cold, people forget to be racist. Just the other day, I'm in Chicago. And I go into this building, and this white man is right behind me. And he goes, "Why don't you go back to Africa and take me with you?" So before he was doing diet and activism.
Well, that's a good joke. That's a good joke. That's actually a good.
That is a good joke. Yeah.
Dick Gregory was the first guy to sit down and just talk to the audience.
That's a good joke about race and how race relations really were. It's like that was like, God, take me with you. It's like just a joke.
Take me with you.
Hey, can you guys hear music?
I can.
I hear a little music.
That means
you got 50 seconds to give us a big send off.
All right, Mark.
This was a great show. We talked all comedy this show. This was great. I like when we do that. So,
well, except for you brought up Trump, and now I got to bring up. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it was comedy.
Just
kidding. I gave Detroit Tigers score up there. So.
Well, there you go.
By the way, I still think it's 5-0. Yep.
For those of you in the future, those are
in the future. That would be the world champion Detroit Tigers back in June when they were beating the lowly White Sox. All right,
there you go.
I hope the White Sox don't come back to this game. That would I'm going to erase this tape if they do.
Well,
Anyway, time to go. All right, 7 seconds. Good night, everybody. We'll talk.
Good night.
Go after we're done being on.
All right.